Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another Axel 72 video. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving my prediction for the Oscar Collazo versus Jayson Vayson fight. And so if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like the video if you do indeed like the video, and feel free to join the Patreon as well. You can request any kind of combat sporting related content, and I will try my best to get it out there for you guys. There has been a great selection of videos that have come from the Patreon already, and I really appreciate all the support I've had with it. And again, like I said, the link will be in the description. Thank you very much. But let's get straight into this one though. So this is Oscar Collazo getting his kind of stage to be able to perform and to showcase how good he is on a big Golden Boy stage. I mean, this event, realistically, obviously we're coming off the hype of what was Canelo Crawford last weekend. This is probably the biggest boxing event of the week, in my opinion. And like I say, this is the kind of first time that I feel like all eyes actually will be on the minimum weight division for boxing fans, because like I say, I feel like it's been a while since Oscar Collazo has been able to have the attention in which I feel like in this point in his career he definitely deserves. I mean, I still don't think he's getting enough attention, if anything. I mean, I think he's a great talent. I think he, has the skill and the ability to be a pound for pound fighter, but at the same time I feel like he's just going to struggle to be able to progress through the rankings and to be able to go on to other weight divisions, and that because of his size and everything like that. And so I feel like that might prevent him, like I say, from being able to create a really well-known, big kind of name and resume. Because, when you look at the lower weight division fighters, of course, your Naoya Inoue's, Junto Nakatani's, even your Kenshiro Tarajis as well, they've all been able to progress through the weights. And again, I feel like Oscar Collazo has that ability to be able to, possibly be able to progress through the weights. But again, it's how well he can actually make the weight with the size in which he is, because he is short in 5'2". But, nonetheless, I'm glad he's getting another main event slot here. And I mean, realistically, at the same time, with what's going on with kind of this underdog thing in which Ring Magazine is doing, of course, they had Anthony Olasquaga on it in the fight week of Canelo Crawford last week. I feel like somebody like a Collazo could easily slot onto another underdog card. And again, not to say he is an underdog, but like I say, again, it will bring them eyes more towards him. Like I say, he's a very skilled southpaw fighter who needs to be up there with the elite of the division. Again, like I say, he's been on a great run. He's coming off basically quite an easy, in my opinion, realistically, KO win against Kano, where he was able to beat him down to the body to basically submission, if anything. And then the win before that, of course, was a fight in which probably has created the most hype and attention for him in his career so far, and that was beating Neomtrong, who, of course, was a champion in the minimum weight division for such a long time, and that was on a big, Latino night. And so, like I say, that was probably the fight that was able to bring him a bit of hype, and probably was the biggest matchup in which we've been able to have in the minimum weight division for a little while. Of course, he also has a win against current WBC champion Melvin Jerusalem and former world champion and also fellow contender in Vic Saludar. So again, like I say, he's got a great resume already, and I think somebody like a Jayson Vayson fight is a good fight. Again, it's a fight in which he's probably going really under the radar, but I think it's a good fight. I think Vayson is somebody who, him himself has fought at a top level, maybe not in the minimum weight division. I believe this is his first fight in that division professionally, but he fought Saigo Aku in the flyweight division, and of course, he's a former champion and wasn't able to get the win in that one, but he's been able to get a good winning streak going, and he's had a few fights kind of all over the place. He's coming off a couple fights which did seem like quite easy fights in Thailand. It's always crazy to me to see a lot of these fights in Thailand are really poor. You would think that maybe, the boxers would have better boxing ability because of how good they are with kickboxing and Muay Thai. But again, the actual boxing ability of the shows in which I see for fighters to then progress on to bigger fights, often them fights that they have in Thailand are just really poor, and the opponent level is just really bad. And so I don't feel like you can take too much from the recent stoppage victories of Vayson. But I suppose at the same time, at least he is still getting the stoppage victories. Something in which, of course, with him fighting in the minimum weight division for the first time will definitely play a factor in, is the fact that he does have a 5-inch reach advantage. Of course, he will be the bigger fighter in there. And again, this is maybe going back to my point of saying why Collazo isn't moving up through the weight divisions. It's maybe because fighters like, Vayson, who of course has been fighting in the light flyweight division, has a 5-inch reach advantage, which is a big reach advantage. Not to say every fighter in that division will have that over Collazo, but that is, like I say, a noticeable aspect, which definitely could play a bit of a factor in this fight. To speak about both fighters individually, Collazo as a fighter, he's got a very nice compact tight guard. I think that's something in which you kind of you see with the elite fighters. I feel like somebody like a Jesse Van Rodriguez is able to really kind of display that really well as well. And yeah, it's just that nice compact tight guard with the returning shots for the most part is being returned. Sometimes I think you can admire his work a bit when he's coming in a bit confidently, but for the most part he is a compact tight guarded fighter. He's got great bodywork. Of course, that was on show last time out as well. He was ripping to the body of Kano, and it did look quite brutal. He's got very good shot variation. I mean, he's able to carry power in a tremendous amount of different punches, and in general, like I say, he's got a great shot variation. I probably would say his best shot is either his body shot, where he just snaps in with the right, or his sharp right hook as well, which is also, something in which he brings up to the head nicely as well, and it's a very nice shot in which he lands. He works angles and openings well. That's, working off the pivots as well. The way that he pivots to then open up body shots is really nice. He lands more significant in exchanges, and sometimes that's something in which maybe isn't always a positive if he is going toe to toe with fighters, because he is trusting himself to be able to land the more powerful shots. Sometimes that's not a good thing, and that can backfire, but for now, of course, it hasn't tremendously. But I believe he did get dropped versus Gerardo Zapata, so again he has been dropped before from my memory. He changes levels well. He has his head off the line nicely. He's got good shot placement. I think he is an accurate fighter, and he can beat you at pretty much every range. I think he can fight, a mid-range, and then control that range, control that tempo, and then go into the central kind of, or in the pockets type of distance whenever he wants. And like I say, he can turn up that tempo and kind of turn relentless if he wants to. He chops you down. He opens you up. He is a very good fight finisher. He has got good timing, and again, like I say, he pivots well. Negatives about him, I think finding the range with his jab, again, can sometimes be a bit of an issue. It can sometimes take a little bit of time, but again, perhaps if Vayson can get behind the jab, maybe that could work. But again, I just don't really see that Vayson is that type of a fighter to be able to cause a tremendous amount of issues to Collazo just with his jab. He lets off fast doesn't let off when he's dealing, against fighters who let off fast combinations. He can be perhaps outthrown a little bit. Of course, when he's landing the more significant shots, your opponent will slow down, but sometimes he can be outthrown just a bit at times. He can be pushed back, again, the smaller fighter often. He can, in my opinion, like I say, admire his work a bit when he's a bit confident, and he can catch shots which are a bit point scoring. I understand he's catching shots, they're not really hurting him, but still, nonetheless, it isn't scoring him points. It is losing him points by catching shots instead of trying to move out the way and not get hit and circle around a bit more. He can be hurt. Again, I think he has been a little bit rocked, a little bit wobbled in certain fights, not tremendously, but a little bit. And he can be a little bit over aggressive, again, similar to what we've seen in more recent times with the knockdowns in which Naoya Inoue has had against him. I think that's kind of similar there. He's willing to go toe to toe, and I think he can force the stoppage a bit at times. And again, like I said, I don't feel like he circles off the ropes tremendously often either. I think he would much prefer to fight off the ropes. To speak about Vayson as a fighter, he's relaxed. He's kind of a fast, explosive, in and out type fighter who throws a lot of combinations, and often them combinations are very overwhelming and thrown with A decent level of power. Again, you can't really go off how much power he has from these last two fights of his. Yes, in his last fight he was able to get a nice stoppage, but again, I don't know how much the shots that he's throwing actually do come with power. It looks like they might do, but again, the speed could also sap the power a bit as well. He's quite light on his feet and bouncy, which I think will make him quite awkward and hard to, land on into time. He throws pretty much all in bunches, and again, that could maybe, like I say, land a little bit on Collazo. His body to head combinations are good. If he's allowed to fight in the front foot, I think he'll be able to beat you down, again, if he's willing to have that, if he's allowed to have that success. He puts his all into his shots. He's very much, kind of all in or all out. He will commit to that work, and he's got heavy body shots as well. He's another good puncher himself to the body. So this could be a body shot off, if that makes sense. A little bit of a competition between the two of them to who lands the better body shots. Negatives about him, I think he doesn't really turn into his shots that well. They can be a bit slappy, his shots at times, and he has a bit of a minimal defensive guard. I think finding range at a mid-range can be a bit of a problem for himself as well, and that, is an issue when he should be trying to fight him at a mid-range against Collazo realistically. I don't think he uses his jab enough, and he can, forget it quite often, and then he's not really setting up his shots, and again, is leading into Collazo's game. His chin can be in the air. He can rush into shots. He can have issues with accuracy with his combinations, and he can often be trying to push you down to the canvas instead of actually land a clean shot to then force you down to the canvas. He can come in wildly. He stands quite tall and not faced a tremendous amount of adversity in his career, I don't believe. Of course, the Yukui fight was one in which showcased that he has fought at a high level, but I still don't feel like he's, especially in more recent fights, faced that much adversity. He can have a little bit of overconfidence and lack of respect in his style, which again sometimes can be a positive, but against something like a Collazo, it could also spell out that he, has a few issues. And I think he can be overly aggressive at times and just forgetting that defense altogether. Who do I think is going to win? I think that Oscar Collazo is going to be able to win via TKO in round 6 and retain his WBO and WBA World Minimumweight titles. I think this is going to be a performance where he's going to be able to get in close with Vayson. I think Vayson's going to start out quite bouncy and quite awkward to land on, but I think the more that Collazo goes to the body, I think he's going to be able to land the more significant shots to the body. I think that, Collazo is going to catch the body shots of Vayson a bit. Maybe he might get caught with a couple of shots, if Vayson's throwing his fast hands, but I don't think that they are going to be enough to be able to slow down Collazo, whereas I think Collazo is going to be able to snap with the more powerful shots, in my opinion, and the more, planted in his feet with them shots. And again, like I say, he is going to be able to land more significantly, and if they are going body to body shots, then I think Collazo will be able to win that kind of any day of the week realistically. So like I say, a TKO in round 6 is my prediction for that. And then who he can go on to fight next? I mean, realistically, a Jerusalem rematch with the WBC belt could happen. He's fighting Kuz next month, so maybe that could happen. But again, not entirely sure how much excitement would be behind that, because of course Collazo's beat Jerusalem. Taduran could be another name for, of course he is the IBF champion. I feel like it is about time to realistically get Collazo moving on and trying to get him, through the champions to then become undisputed, because I feel like the fights are there to be made, and I think they would also give good paychecks to Jerusalem and Taduran, who I both believe, are good Filipino fighters and do deserve good paychecks for what they've given to the sport. So again, I think they could get both of them fights made. Or if not, I don't know if I'm ready to see this fight just yet, but Matsumoto is now WBA regular champion, and he won on the Inoue Akhmadaliev undercard. So maybe give it a couple more fights before we put Matsumoto in with Collazo. But, for a Japanese hope, he is kind of the rising star for Japanese minimum weight boxing. So there is a lot of pressure on him, I believe. So again, possibly there could be something down the line with that fight if they build him correctly. To speak about the co-main event in which I wanted to talk about of this card, it is, of course, for the undisputed world flyweight titles, and that is Gabriella Fundora versus Alexas Kubicki. Sorry if my pronunciation is awful. As always, I'll call her Alexas to try not, get any confusion. I think it is, for Fundora, surprising to see her coming off, her headlining slots where she was able to go out there last time out and put on a stoppage performance, to now be put on a co-main event of, not a massive Golden Boy event. I mean, I think possibly, I don't know how well the actual event sold when Fundora was headlining. If you can look, you can see, and you can see quite a good selection of empty seats. And again, as a promoter, that's never really a good sign, and it can often be the case. And it's unfortunate with women's boxing. There isn't, as big of a market for it as men's boxing. So unless we are putting on the best versus the best, one fighter alone, unless they're like Katie Taylor or Amanda Serrano or maybe Clarissa Shields, is big enough to be able to sell an event themselves, really. So I don't feel like Gabriella Fundora is there just yet. I think she has the potential to become an absolute star in the boxing world, but again, just not quite yet. So putting her as a main event, maybe in my opinion doesn't really surprise me. It didn't sell really that well, but I might be wrong. It might have sold really well and I'm just kind of reading into it a little bit too much. She is, Fundora, of course, somebody who is very quickly still, in my opinion, becoming an exciting, fan-friendly women's fighter. And to watch her scoring back-to-back knockouts, it's entertaining, it's exciting, and in my opinion, I'm very much here for it. And of course, she is the youngest undisputed champion, so again, she's already kind of created her own legacy there, and I think she's getting better and better with every performance in which I've seen her in. For Alexis, she is a Canadian fighter who's coming off the best win of her career against a Mexican opponent in Hernandez Mendoza, and that Mendoza is now going on to fight Amanda Gaye, so I suppose we'll be able to see the actual true level of how good Mendoza is when she fights Gaye on a MVP show. But, after dominating her, Alexis, and getting herself in a good contender's position, she's now, of course, been given this shot. And I think it's a good fight. It's a fight, again, like I say, another probably, I don't know if it's a voluntary or a mandatory. It might have been a mandatory. But again, it's a decent fight. It's solid matchmaking. Alexis is actually younger than Fundora, so again, this might offer a new challenge, a bit of like youthfulness coming into this, because of course, Kubicki or Alexis hasn't, had the same, well, has had about a similar kind of level of experience. Of course, Fundora has fought at a much higher level, but in the kind of similar amount of fights, and like I say, a similar amount of age, that youthfulness will be there for both of them. Fundora, I think she does still have defensive vulnerabilities, but I think she's learnt to be able to punch downwards very well, and I think she's always looking very spiteful whilst doing so. And again, there is so many similarities in which I see between her and her brother, but again, I think she actually manages range a bit better at times than her brother. She stands tall, but in my opinion, that actually probably does go in her favour, unless she gets caught by a really explosive punch like her brother did against Brian Mendoza. Then I think, standing tall can actually be a benefit to her, because of course her opponents just can't really reach her, to be completely honest. I think, like I say, she's definitely improving in my opinion. I think her combinations are looking a lot sharper, and she seems to be able to throw at a high level and at a high pace throughout a longer period of the fight now. And, perhaps she may start to force the fight a bit at times, and may have that in this fight if Alexis isn't going away, because, of course, she's knocked out her past two opponents, and she maybe is getting a bit comfortable by going out there and knocking everybody out. But if she can't do that, then, it might perhaps become a little bit of an issue for Fundora if she becomes a little bit complacent, or if she starts to force the fight a bit. I mean, Alexis is a good fighter. I think she's a solid technical fighter who can push Fundora back with her physical aggression, and if she gets her on the ropes, she will definitely unload a lot of shots. And again, it might be something in which, Fundora hasn't had to face a tremendous amount. I mean, her last opponent was somebody who was going to really just go on the back foot and move around and try and time Fundora with a shot, and that really kind of did go into her favour. But I feel like Alexis could be a good stylistic clash for Fundora, due to them kind of both being willing to kind of stand in front of each other and be aggressive. The problem with Alexis, I think, is she gets drawn into a fight too much and often forgets her defense, leading with her, head off a lot of the time and getting clipped with quite a lot of shots. And I think inevitably that's kind of going to be the reason why I'm going to say that Gabriella Fundora is going to be able to win. I think it could probably be a bit of a tough fight for Fundora. Again, I think Alexis's aggressiveness might be able to land a couple shots on Fundora. I don't think that Fundora is going to be able to get a knockout in this one. I'm going to go with a unanimous decision victory for Fundora, but she might have to showcase a bit of an improvement in her footwork to be able to, really slow down or stop Alexis coming forwards. Who Fundora could go on to fight next, though, there is a few options. I think it will be, again, interesting to see where they go with Fundora. I think there isn't too many tremendously big fights, which, I feel like Fundora kind of needs, but and Angelina Lucas is a good fight. Lucas is a Kazakhstan fighter who has got a good Kazakh fan base. The Kazakhstan fighters always get behind their own, so that could be a fight that could be made. She's ranked highly. If not, Lopez, an Argentinian fighter who's undefeated, again, could be another, decent fight to make. I suppose there isn't a tremendous amount of rush with Fundora, but when she is really just rushing through all these fighters in which she's been in against, again, if she gets a knockout here, then fans will be asking to see bigger and bigger fights. So maybe somebody like a Mizuki Haruta, who of course has been on her own kind of tear recently and has been able to get a good, selection of victories, and I think is improving herself with every fight. I think that could be a great matchup. Of course, Haruta is in the super flyweight division, so it would be forcing Fundora to come up, but I think that could be an excellent fight. Again, I don't know if it would happen next, but maybe down the line that could be, like I say, an excellent fight. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you did, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.